So last time that you were with us, you saw us pull this old 390 FE engine out of my 64 Galaxie. Now, what we're going to do this week is we're going to get this thing apart and see what's going on with it. Now, we know that this car had a really bad smoking problem, a really bad oil consumption problem. We were at like 100 miles per 1 quart of oil. So it's really bad. So we know just based off the last time we pulled the plugs that the passenger side bank is the worst. So that's where we're going to start. Last time we pulled the plugs, they were just caked up and they looked terrible. I mean, really, really bad. 3 of the 4 of them. So we're going to pull this cylinder head off first. This week we will go ahead and pull both cylinder heads off. We'll get that apart. We'll flip it over, pull the oil pan off, and then we'll pull a piston out and see kind of what the state of the rings are. We're thinking it's either going to be one of 2 things. They're going to like crumble off whenever we pull the piston out, or they're going to be like basically welded to the piston itself. So we'll get this thing tore apart right now. So if we take a look at these plugs that are here, these are not, so this is a relatively new set of plugs. Honestly, they have very few miles on them, but if we take a look at them, you can see these aren't as bad and messed up as the auto lights that I had in it initially when we first got this thing started. The Napa store had auto lights, so that's what we just stuck in it just to keep it running. But you can see, like on this one, you can see some buildup already starting here, and you can see how much oil are on these. So they've seen better days. They aren't probably as bad as they could have been. And I'm surprised. It looks like this thing has had the heads off of it at some point. That looks like probably the intake gaskets were Felpros, and I'm guessing that's what these are also. Gotcha.
Glad you got it. But I did not have a real good handle on it.
Right.
Just stand it up. What kind of ring?
A little bit of one.
Not real bad.
But it's not bad. I mean,
let's get the other head off there.
Show what these cylinder boards look like. They're really super smooth. You think there's a chance that they had this thing apart and Dingleberry honed it at some point?
I don't think so.
Don't think so?
I mean, it's possible. Who knows?
Who knows, yeah. Because they're in way better shape than I expected.
Well, there's a
ring ridge, but I'm talking about there's no. I was looking for like discoloring on the cylinder wells
the other
and
thing,
stuff.
if it's got a broke ring, if the rings were broken, it looks like it would have some grooves in it. I don't.
That's what I'm saying. I don't see anything like that.
Right.
And you can see a lot of carbon buildup on the piston itself.
That's really not as bad as I expected it to be.
Yeah, me either.
As much oil as it's using.
So that's kind of what we're seeing here already. But these are kind of, I'm guessing, blue Felpro gaskets. So maybe the heads have been off of this thing at some point. We didn't even know it. So let's go ahead and bust off the other side real quick. Do you know that the vent in the top of that top loader is that? There's just a hole in the top of the cover, and that's how they vented it.
Really?
Yes! Apparently it's very known for those things to do exactly that. All this crud on top of them because they vented it out of a hole in the top.
Running out of open hole.
And that's the vent. Because that company that I was looking at for a rebuild kit for this thing, they make a vent. Well, they make a vent that goes in the tail housing instead of up here and... Yeah, and they, ooh, this one's pretty cruddy.
That's the reason I'm thinking it's probably not that a broke rocker shaft, because it's on both sides.
Yeah.
And the chances are, I guess, slim that both of them are broke.
Right.
Every time I ever followed this thing,
you can see how bad
it smoked
it is.
bad out of both sides.
Yeah, I just always seemed that it was worse on the passenger side.
I couldn't tell much difference in it. I got it.
Oh, this had water in this side.
I swear. Side you drained it out of. Get you a light.
There's a lot of oil on that gasket there.
Look at that cylinder.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's up here, down here, down here. Look at that.
And 3 out of 4 of these.
And these gaskets are kind of weird. What do these not? I mean, maybe it's just I don't know. But like, look how far out away from the piston these gaskets sit.
See what you're saying?
You know what I mean?
What does the combustion chamber look like? It's got it's the shape of the combustion chamber.
Look at that. We didn't even look at the heads. Basically, it looks the same as the passenger side, I would say. In general, this piston's got some worse carbon buildup on it. But look inside of these heads here. They're pretty terrible.
That one's not as bad as these other 3.
Yeah.
3 out of the 4 are really bad. I mean, they was packed full of oil.
And there's, I mean, yeah, these 2.
3 out of these. There's
3,
1,
yep.
2, and then 3.
1, 2, and 3, yeah.
It's they're all. Huh. So it was.
Yeah, it's bad. It's just all bad.
Let's get the lifters out of this thing, so we can turn it over and pull the pan off of it.
The oil kind of standing here. We were talking about that. That's here, here.
3 out of 4 on both sides.
Yeah, you can see on this side, just this oil. When we pulled it off, there's just oil kind of standing here in these gaskets, basically. Now we'll roll it over, pull the oil pan off, and see what's going on with the pistons. Sludge, like he said, it's really not bad, but it's not. It's seen better days, but also it appears that this oil pan has a pretty big dent in the bottom of it. Look at that. Big dent in the bottom of the pan.
Probably done that when he got the red clay mud.
Oh, yeah, wherever that got it in. And it's all setting. That's weird. Anyway.
Let's take them 2 out right
These
there.
2?
Yeah.
It's stamped. They're stamped 8 and 8.
Are they really?
This one is, at least. That one's a 8.8. They've had this thing apart at some point.
I think they have too.
Somebody took this engine apart.
Because those gaskets are way fresher than.
This one's not stamped, but that one is definitely stamped 8.8. There's a 7.7, 5.5.
Is it stamped on?
3.3. Yeah, they've stamped it.
It's stamped on this
They've
side?
pulled this thing apart at some point. Right there, 8.8.
No, here on this one.
It could be. I just can't see it.
Hang on a second. Yes.
So this is number 4.
Yep.
And it looks like they've stamped every one but number 4. There's a 1. There's 2. I can't see that one.
Well, it don't matter. Let's just knock that. Let's knock that one out. Is that the one? Has that got a bunch of oil coming out of that cylinder?
I don't know. Look at it and see. What we're talking about is actually figuring out which rod and cap go together, and they have stamped this. You can see it right there, 7.7. Here we go. We got another. There's 8.8. So this basically confirms, other than along with the gaskets, that this thing has been apart at some point. Dad doesn't remember it. I have no idea why they would have took it apart, but it's definitely been apart. So that's what we're talking.
Gasket. I don't think the head gaskets are factory.
Yeah.
They're Felpros. I doubt seriously those are factory at all. So
this thing's been apart, that's for sure. So that's interesting to know. I mean, it doesn't really tell us anything, but it does tell us that it was at least apart at some point. But that's what we were talking about. We were going to stamp these so we can make sure we keep these paired up. But luckily, they've been stamped already. But we're going to go ahead and drop number 8 out, get it took apart, and see what the piston and the ring itself looks like. Want to take a quick minute here before we keep going, let you guys know that if you're interested in what you're seeing and you like what you're seeing, maybe you're learning something from this, that's kind of always our goal. You can always check out a membership for our channel. We got a few little things that kind of perks for members for the channel. If you check that out, you can go over and look on our YouTube page, and that'll tell you kind of all the perks that are there. One of the biggest being that when we get videos done early, I will release them ahead of time, so you'll be the first one to get to see what we're working on next, and then they'll go live, basically. So if you don't care, if you're interested, check it out. Okay, so yeah, so we'll take out number 8 first.
Look at that. Or I could just get it.
Shut up.
Is there any tension on them?
Maybe a little. There's
nothing like I thought.
Ford bearings.
Those are Henry Ford bearings.
What do you see in there?
Well, the compression rings are not, they're not bad.
One thing we did see is that the bearings are pretty bad. They're pretty wasted. Be that surprised by it. Crank is not so bad.
O-rings are not stuck. Surprising.
To be honest with you, we're kind of scratching our heads a little. We just haven't found anything what we were expecting at all on this thing. I mean, there's plenty of wear on it. Just, I mean, again, it's a 6-year-old engine. It's been apart at some point. We figured that out. But there's nothing that, I mean, the rings aren't what we were expecting or anything. So I don't know what was causing this super bad oil consumption issue. There you go.
Did you get it?
Yeah. So there's what the inside of our bearing is looking like. Like Dad said, into the copper. Same deal.
That connection rod.
Hold it, okay.
I don't know, it don't appear that they're stuck, except maybe to the expander, I don't know. That appears to be part of the problem. That thing is
Stuck to
hanging on to that expander. I mean,
yeah, like stuck.
seriously, yeah.
Where's those?
They was stuck to the expander. They just got all their marks on the expander, from the expander to the
Ring.
to the O-ring. So, and there's fairly reasonable tension on the compression rings. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I don't know if this is actually going to be the end of the video, but
It won't be then.
we don't know. We took it apart expecting to find something. More than likely, we thought we'd find rings, something to do with rings, but we haven't found that yet. So we're going to wrap it up for today. We took these 2 pistons out. Nothing obvious there. Maybe it's a culmination of a lot of little things. Me and Dad are going to talk about it and kind of figure out what's the next steps. So we'll see you whenever we figure those out. Alright guys, it is a few days later now. We pulled those 2 pistons that we pulled out of the engine. We brought them up here to the shop and started kind of looking into them a little bit. And we may have to lean on some of you FE guys that are out there to kind of tell us what we're seeing. We have some thoughts behind it. We have some small block Chevy rings here, oil rings here to kind of do a comparison with, to kind of see the differences between them and what we pulled out. And so, like I said, you guys have to let us know kind of what you think is going on, or if you know, or if you've seen this, let us know in the comments. It's easy. You can see here we went ahead and pulled the pistons apart, pulled the rings off of, well, we pulled the rings off of both of them at one point or another. And you can see, yeah, here we go. These guys right here, Dad has put back on to this one. We pulled them off and we took them back off, and we put them back on. Now, if we look here, so this is a set of the rings that we pulled off of this piston. So we got, yeah, the oil rings that we pulled off of this piston. And if you look in here close, you can actually see these little indentions on the ring itself that have come.
Indentions are spot welds welded to that expansion ring. This one we took apart and we got all 4 of them broke loose from the expanders. But these, I've never seen this before, and I've talked to a few people, friends of mine, that's fooled with stuff like this, and they kind of scratch their heads too. So maybe something familiar to some of you folks out there, but these oil rings were welded, stuck, tight. All these little dots right here is just like a little resistance weld. And they were stuck to the expansion ring on both of these pistons. They were absolutely locked down. You could not rotate them. When we took them apart, they kind of popped loose as you took them out of the ring groove. But all 4 of the oil rings were welded to both sides of that expander.
And so we believe that because of that, and based off of the filth and oil that we saw on top of the pistons and things like that when we took the engine apart, you guys saw all that. That's what we think is the big issue. Is we know that at least 6 of the 8 all kind of had this similar build up on top of the pistons. For some reason, 2 of the pistons weren't as bad as the other 6. So we think that this, when we end up taking the rest of the engine apart, that we'll find kind of this similar deal with these spot welds on all of those rings. And the other thing that Dad noted there a minute ago when we were looking at it, these rings they're sharp as a razor. I mean, they've really
Compression rings are sharp too. They're really sharp. These edges these corners, they'll cut you on the compression rings.
Right.
First and second rings will cut you. So
the expansion ring here, you can see how like sprung out it is. If we pull and look at this set of small block Chevy rings, you can see, and I won't pull the actual oil ring out, there's no reason, but you can see this guy right here, it is, if you see there's our gap, so that's actually touching, it's like unsprung. But if you look at this one that came out of that motor, it is really sprung. So I don't know if it's supposed to be like that from, if that was like a factory thing, if maybe this is just a little different make, or if that's got really hot and that's kind of sprung it like that. I don't know. So like I said, that's where I need you guys to comment on that. So that was where we were doing a little bit of comparison. But I think what we'll end up having to do is go ahead and take that engine completely apart, and it's going to have to go to a shop. It's going to need to get bored. Yeah, so I think that's probably going to be what ends up happening with that engine. I don't know exactly when that's going to happen, but maybe at some point we'll have to kind of get in line at the machine shop to get that, to get it checked out. So we know for sure that based off what we took it, based off of this, we know the intake had come off of that engine at some point. We know that the heads have come off of it based off of the gaskets that we found. So at some point the engine has been at least partially disassembled. We thought that because of these stampings on the rods. So if we look at this guy right here, you can see clearly there's 8 here on the rod and on the cap there. So we thought that was probably meant it had been apart. But Dad talked to our cousin Major, and he said that some of the factory stuff would have been stamped on assembly. So we're not sure. We don't know if it was stamped that way with assembly or if someone had to take it apart at some point. But like I said, we know now that the engine has come apart at some point, at least to some degree. Now we have no idea how far apart or why it came apart, because we don't. I'll have to dig and see if maybe there's some kind of records. If maybe Richard kept some records. Maybe I can ask Velma if he wrote down some stuff that happened to that car, maybe. And maybe we can figure out the history of it and see if he ever wrote down why it came apart. But we know for sure now that the block is going to have to go to the engine shop. We were fairly confident in that to begin with, but we wanted to get it apart and see what we found. So it's going to have to go to a machine shop. It's going to have some work done to it. Let me know in the comments any ideas you guys have, or maybe some things that you guys have done to FE motors in the past, or things that you would highly recommend whenever you were building a motor like that. We're thinking just a mild rebuild, doesn't need to be any sort of craziness with that car, because it's just going to basically be a cruiser. But if there's any things that you say, or products, maybe brands or something, you say avoid that, definitely use this. Everybody's got their stuff, but it'd be interesting to hear what you guys have to say, so you can jump in the comments and tell us about that. Also, anything that you guys would recommend for that, because I know based off comments I've got in the past, I have some guys that are pretty big FE guys that follow along with the channel, probably because of this car, and they might have some suggestions. I think that's going to wrap us up. I'm sorry it wasn't like I was expecting it to be a little bit more of a aha. We had to do a little bit of investigation to get it there. But we do know that these rings are killed. We know that there's kind of some odd stuff going on in there, and it's definitely going to be worth it to take this thing apart, all the way apart, and then send it to a machine shop. So thank you guys so much for following us, joining us this week. This was kind of a late one. This is we're filming on Tuesday, and this one's going out this Friday. So we were running close on this one a little bit. So we appreciate you guys following along, keeping up with us. Make sure to subscribe to the channel if you like this. If you're interested to see what's going on as we move forward with it, do that. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram. That's important too. We'll keep our following going. We appreciate you guys so much. We'll see you next week.